Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Retirement Point podcast. Today, our guest is Nancy Young, and I'm really excited to get to know her and for y'all to get to know her as well. And by the way, my name is Catherine Harbour, and I'll be your host today. So welcome, Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes. How are you doing in North Carolina?
Well, I'm trying to get acclimated to it, and it's a little different than any place I've lived previously, and I'm having some difficulty finding my way around. So,
Okay. You're finding your, so do you, so you live in Preston Point. So are you, by finding your way around, do you mean the community of Preston Point, or do
yeah,
you mean the general area? Okay.
the general area.
The geographic area that you're in. Okay. Okay. All right. And you have family in the area as well, right?
Yes, I have a daughter, Ellen Christopher, who lives exactly 3 miles from here, Prescott
Okay.
Point. And she is also a registered nurse. She works at WakeMed and has been a tremendous help in helping me get settled.
I bet. Well, how nice that she is only 3 miles away. That's great. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about what brought you to North Carolina, other than your daughter, of course.
Well, I was having served as a disaster nurse for Red Cross for a number of years. I was always on the helping end of that experience, which I found very worthwhile. However, I became a victim of a disaster in 2022 with Hurricane Ian. And my house, where I lived in Venice, Florida at the time, was basically destroyed. We
Wow.
lost two roofs, the living room, dining room, all of the carpeting then became soaked because there was nothing to prevent the continuous rain coming in. And my husband, second husband, had died several months before that incident, and uh, my son came to help me since I was alone then. And he came from Utah and spent about a month while we tried to pick things up. And I found it was just more than I could deal with at the time. So um, I decided that I would sell that house and move. And that brought me to thinking of moving here where my daughter lives.
Hmm.
And that's what I did.
Okay. Okay. Well, what isn't that interesting? You helped people in that situation for so many years, and then, like you said, you were a victim to a disaster. Yeah. So you really, served so many people, I would imagine, over the years. And I want to hear about maybe one that maybe sticks out in your mind as the most impactful one that you served. Would you tell us a little bit about that? Pick one.
Well, there were many people over the years, and basically what the disaster nurse does is establish a place where she will be and can be reached. One of the primary needs everyone has in a disaster is loss of medications and loss of eyeglasses and other hearing aids, things people need for their daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nurse does yeoman duty in replacing all of those things for people and being sure that everyone has what they need to survive uh, and continue their lives more comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And the Red Cross is extremely generous and very helpful, and it's an incredible organization to work for.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Is there one disaster where you went and served that really stands out to you?
well, there were many, but I remember one in particular, a young man who had was almost totally deaf and had hearing aids, and they were missing. And it was quite a project to get them replaced, but we did do that, and he was able to continue to function because having lost the hearing aids, he was virtually unable to participate in any kind of daily living. He just was not able to function.
Right. And where was that? Which disaster was that?
I think it was Louisiana, but I'm not sure. I've been in so many states,
Right?
including Puerto Rico. Uh,
Wow.
Puerto
Okay.
Rico was a particularly interesting experience because the language, I'm not fluent in Spanish. And I found out during that disaster when I sought help from my husband, who came overnight, and I found out then that I hadn't known previously that he was fluent in Spanish and he had had it in school. And
Surprise.
those people who really learned it and could use it many, many years later. So, um, but in places where you have a language problem, you can usually have a native of the area who will go with you everywhere you go all the time that you're there and help you to communicate.
Hmm. Well, and how nice that that person it was your husband. Wow.
Yes,
That made it really nice, right?
right.
Well, good. Okay. Well, I know we kind of started in the beginning, like, or the most recent past. So, and we've gone back a little bit, but I know you started your career. Gosh, you went to school for nursing and then got your master's degree, and then started your career in nursing administration. And that was your primary career path. And then it sounds like you got to spend a lot of years actually also doing nursing yourself, right, for the Red Cross. So you did the administration and the nursing. It sounds like a very rewarding a career path for sure.
It was.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
felt very satisfied with how I had spent my working years because I
Hmm.
think some of the things I did teaching, I taught 96 sophomore students. And while you're on disaster services, you do a lot of education of people who have just suffered a major disaster. And
Hmm.
that's
Well, it
very
sounds like you.
rewarding.
Sorry, yeah, it sounds like that you like the teaching piece.
I
Really
did.
educating people, educating nursing students. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about let me rephrase that. Tell us what were some of the big changes in nursing from the time you started to the time that you retired?
Well, there were many. At one point early on, I was in California, in Sacramento, and had 1,000-bed hospital with a daily census of 750 people. And I also was responsible for a 2-year program for nursing, a 3-year diploma program for nursing, a 4-year for BSN, Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Hmm.
And the first 2-year nursing program started in the country. We started. And all of that was very rewarding. We had a large hospital, and all of those different levels of nursing need clinical experience. So we had educators come in and work with them on our units and could do all of the various programs. And it was also a teaching hospital for medical students and interns. So it was a very interesting environment and
Mm-hmm.
very worthwhile.
Yeah. So from the medical aspect, just kind of building on that, from the medical aspect, what major changes, good or bad, positive or negative, have you seen since you first started in the medical field to when you retired?
Well, I think the the newest thing would have been the 2-year nursing program that started, and it was found to be pretty successful. Um, and early on in my career in nursing, which really started around 1953, um, then people were very interested in trying primary care, where you had a nurse who was responsible for a particular group of patients and had nurses who worked under her. And it generally worked pretty well. Some people were very reluctant to get into that mode, but and then so many things, um, new things developed in nursing, that new equipment and things that had never been available before. And you had to have an education program in a hospital to teach nurses who had never even seen some of this equipment what it was, what it did, how to use it, um, how to correct it if there was a problem in using it. And that education goes on now, and it will go on forever because there are always new nurses coming out of nursing programs, and there's always new equipment being developed.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who use it will have to learn how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the biggest change in all of nursing
Mm.
I've seen.
Yeah. Do you, when you go to the doctor today or have some medical care, do you ever think, gosh, I wish fill in the blank was more like the old days? Is there anything like that for
No,
you?
I'm delighted with every new thing that comes down the pike because
Okay.
it enables you to do a better job and with greater empathy for the patient. And there's a lot of patient teaching involved, a lot of family teaching. For instance, dialysis can be done in a hospital now, but we also taught people to do it at home
Mm.
and supplied the equipment for it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's much better than coming to a unit on 2 or 3 or 4 days a week
Mm-hmm.
when you could do it at home
Mm-hmm.
and skillfully if they're taught well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have a friend that um, used to do it at home, right? Until
Right,
unfortunately she passed away. She was on the list for a transplant and didn't get there. So
right.
yeah, yeah. But she I, I don't know how often. Maybe everyone has to do it a different amount, right? I don't know, but she
Yeah.
regularly had to do it, and for years did it at her house. So yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's encouraging, Nancy. It really is that there's nothing today in our medical system where you would say, "Gee, I wish, it was like the old days." I think the only thing that comes to my mind is I hear these stories. So my husband's grandfather was a physician, and I hear stories about him and his practice. He was a primary care, an internist, I guess, is maybe they're synonymous. But he would make house calls. Even up until, gosh, he retired not until he was in his 70s, and he would make house calls until then. So, and visit his patients in the hospital. And I think I don't, well, I know house calls don't happen today, and I don't know how much primary care physicians or internists visit their patients when they're in the hospital. But that sounds nice to me, right? But I think they have today probably have too many patients, to be able to do that. That's my guess.
Well, surprisingly enough, there are new inventions, and not new actually, they're many, many years old at this point. But you can have a video conference with your physician,
Mm-hmm.
your home, while they are in their office.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as comfortable as an on-site visit in the physician's office. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that didn't used to happen, and
Sure.
it is a house call of a sort.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also there are other programs developed which basically do the same thing. For instance, there is a program in use here where you can contract with a physician, and the physician will come to your home and apartment here in Prescott, and see you. You can even have blood work done here in your apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and you will get the results.
Mm-hmm.
So house calls maybe aren't called house calls anymore, but they do exist, and there
Right.
are ways to accomplish it.
Yeah.
And certainly, I think the video conferencing is, I know I have used that a number of times myself
Mm-hmm.
and found it very helpful. And I think the
Yeah.
physicians too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That is nice because then they don't have to travel, right? Because that takes up time, right? So again, they can see more patients, right? I do. That is great, right? And you're obviously very technology savvy. My
no,
parents.
wish.
Well, I can confidently say I know my parents have a difficult time trying to have a video conference, and it's interesting. Sometimes I'm on the phone with them and we're trying to do it, and I'm talking to their foreheads. So,
Well,
but we
you could
try.
do it, but it works.
Right, exactly. But that is technology has afforded that, right? And that is
Yes,
one positive of the advancement of technology. Yeah, absolutely. And I think more that's it's great to hear that at Preston Point they are implementing that, right?
yes,
That's really wonderful. And you are probably totally up to speed on all the different ways that they're handling medical care at Preston Point because that's something you were in for years, right?
well, they're not actually, their physician is seeing a patient, and what is needed is done there on
Mm-hmm.
site. We're not literally doing medical procedures as such, other than
Sure.
are doing blood work, for instance. So you don't have to leave your apartment and travel to a lab and
Mm-hmm.
get an appointment for that day and that time, and someone will draw the blood and so on. When this can actually be done in your apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and
That is
it helps,
nice.
it helps everyone involved in it.
That's right. Have you noticed an opportunity to uh, educate other residents, if you will, just about, I would imagine they might, already look at you as someone who is, knowledgeable about the medical field. And I wonder if you've kind of have people looking to you.
Not really, no.
Okay.
And
Well, I
we
bet
have,
that's coming, Nancy.
well, no, we have on site a full-time registered nurse,
Sure.
Sheila, who is an exceptional nurse, in my opinion,
Mm.
and does a lot of education all day, every day.
Oh, okay.
She's always around. She's always there to help you. Uh, she seems to intuitively know when you might need a visit, and she can stop and ask, if your condition is better than it was this morning, and is there anything she can do, and have you tried this or that? And she really is an asset. And so the patient teaching is done through her, basically, and it's ongoing. You see her constantly through the day, and she's always available for questions, and she's always available with helpful advice, and she's a golden asset, I think, to this facility.
Wow. Well, that's quite an endorsement coming from you, for sure. I do appreciate nurses so very much. I mean, really and truly, it's it's like teachers and nurses. I mean, gosh, they deserve all the accolades. I mean, really and truly. So thank you so much. Yes. So thank you so much for all you've done, especially for, oh gosh, I can't even imagine how comforting, it must be when people who have been through a disaster know, they meet someone like you who is like, okay, I'm helping you get your medications, because those are so important. I mean, some of them are really and truly a matter of life and death, right? These medications that people are taking. So to help them make sure that they get the medications they need, that's so critical. And so thank you for all of your service at the Red Cross. Yeah.
You're welcome. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
I bet you did, really, knowing that you were helping, and I can only imagine the relief people must have felt, when you're handing them their medication or their hearing aids or their glasses or, whatever it is that they need to live, right? To live comfortably and know that they're safe. I mean, gosh, so thank you. We're going to talk about some things that are just a little bit more esoteric. Maybe that's the right word for it. But are there any traditions or values from when you were growing up that you would like to see revitalized today?
I hold dear from my children's growing up. I was a volunteer in many areas before I got into Red Cross. And things such as helping out in church. I was a funeral planner for 6 years and helped people who needed help when someone had passed. Uh, I was a volunteer in church. I was in distributing Holy Communion. Did that for 15 or 20 years, I think. And in our family, my children were always very aware of any volunteer service that I was involved in, because I was gone for whatever time that particular service took. And my husband also did volunteer. And we found that the children had kind of adapted that as part of their ethics. And they volunteer. They still do. I have one son who's a violin maker, but volunteers in prisons and does meditation groups and a lot of things. And I have another son who's helps Salvation Army with all of their meals and is there when they have holidays or if they need someone to prepare food. And my daughter, who's a nurse, does an awful lot of volunteer work as part of her working. And it's very comforting to me to know that the children have picked that up on their own and found that volunteering is really worthwhile. You get a lot more out of it than you ever put into it. And it's nice that they have adopted that. Um,
Sounds like you and your husband instilled that in them, and maybe not so intentionally, but that you just modeled that for them, right? So,
yes,
so that's something. So, is that something you'd like to see? Would love to see maybe, the broader population really embrace that. That.
well, there are many, many, many people who volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
and you may never know it. And
Mm,
they do a tremendous service to the community. A
mm-hmm.
library, there are a lot of volunteers in a public library. And
Mm-hmm.
if you had to pay a librarian for all of the services that are offered with a library, it would be quite an expense. But
Mm,
that's just another community volunteer that
mm.
develops on its own.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. There are a lot of quiet volunteers that we we don't know they're volunteering. They just give, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Keeps us enjoying more of life, I think, with all of the help you get that you're not even aware of.
yeah. Do you have any opportunities at Preston Point to volunteer?
Oh, I'm sure there are volunteers. I haven't as yet. I'm still trying to get myself settled.
Sure. Hmm.
And I'm also trying to contact and help my children who live in 4 different states. And
Wow.
so it's somewhat of an effort to keep in contact with all of them and helping them with what they have going
Sure.
on in their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. So your four are in different states. So one's in North Carolina. You said one's in Utah. Where are the other two?
One's in San Francisco. Uh, I've got it. I have a son who's a professor at Georgetown in Washington, D.C.
Hmm. Okay.
That's where the fourth one is.
Wow. Okay. They are really spread out
Yes, yeah,
all over the country. Wow.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
They
And
took
do they
education
all
very
have,
seriously.
I'm sorry?
They took education very seriously. Two of
They
them have
did.
PhDs, and
Okay. Yep. That's not surprising either, given you have a graduate education. You have a master's, right?
right, yeah,
Yep.
in
Yep.
administration.
Yep. Yep. That's right. So you have grandchildren then?
Yes, I have 5 grandchildren.
Okay. Yep.
My
Are
daughter
any in?
3, and my son, who's the violin maker, has twins, twin boys.
Oh, wow. Neat. And is he the one in Utah or San
Utah,
Francisco?
right?
Utah.
Yes.
Okay. 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 Well, fantastic. Um, so I'm 57 years old, and you know,
92.
wow. Yeah. So how would you tell someone my age, what advice would you give someone my age for aging so gracefully and so well like you, who is now 92 years old, and I would never guess it in a million years?
Um, I guess it's just probably luck. Um, I always worked, even when I had the children, and stayed active and obviously volunteered a
Hmm.
lot. Um, and I think that's part of kind of what keeps you going. I think if you're active and doing things.
Okay, so stay active, and I've heard that before. So thank you for confirming that. Stay active and continue. It sounds like continue in some either working or volunteering, doing serving others in some capacity, whether you're getting paid for it or you're volunteering like that. that is something it sounds like you would also recommend.
Yes, it,
Yeah.
it keeps you active. It's interesting.
Mhm.
Volunteering can be a lot of fun, and it can also be very serious and very helpful to whomever you're working with.
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep. Well, thank you for that. I think it's great. I think it's great advice. Um, so Nancy, this is a big question. What it's just kind of an overarching question here. What are at 92? You've told us you're 92 years old. What are the most important? Give us two or three most important life lessons that you've learned.
well, I think you have to be very involved with your family and your children if you want to raise them to be helpful, um, good citizens who enjoy what they're doing and are active and contribute in some way to their community. And um, I'm, as you know, volunteering. It's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, beyond that. I think you just have to be um, social. I think you have to have friends and do things with people and contribute wherever you are in any way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Yeah.
magic potion.
Sounds like being present for your family, for your friends, right? Volunteering, giving back. Those are some great life lessons to share with our viewers, for sure.
I think doing as much traveling as is possible for you in your state of life. We've always traveled extensively and with the children and without, and
Mm.
with friends. And uh, I find that very enjoyable and very helpful. And
Mhm. Yeah. Where do you have a favorite place that you've traveled?
France,
France. Okay.
France,
Okay. So,
yeah,
so a big city, Paris, or in the countryside?
anywhere in France,
Okay.
Dijon, Marseille, any place that's in France. I
Okay.
love going there, and I find it very worthwhile. And my children, I think, enjoy it too. My son, uh, who teaches at Georgetown, is a professor of French.
Oh, okay.
Every summer there, and spent uh, a year in college at the American College. So lived there for a year and is there every summer because that's his field, and he needs to be active in it and keeping up in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
It is a beautiful country, for sure. Yeah. Have you been to the French Riviera?
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Sounds like you've been all over France. Yep. Yep. Wow. It is beautiful. I remember the first time I went to Paris, I was 25 years old, just me, had a backpack on. I got a ride from the airport to the city, and I was just from my seatmate, the person sitting next to me on the plane, and I was dropped off at the Arc de Triomphe with my backpack and my Let's Go Europe book.
There's a very nice restaurant right there.
Well, I didn't have the money for that. I was on a serious budget, but I had to find a place to stay. That was my first stop, was go to a hostel place down in, I don't even remember exactly where it was, but I got on the train. I figured that out, and anyway, the rest is history. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. So I also really like France. So I can see why it's your favorite, for sure. Well, anything else you would like our viewers to know, Nancy?
Thank you for the opportunity and hope that other residents will take advantage of it because it's interesting to know about the people with whom you're living.
Absolutely. I hope they do too. Well, help us spread the word. Volunteer to help us spread the word. We would appreciate that, and I really appreciate your time and getting to know you. And again, thank you so much for all of your years of serving our community, of training nurses. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how many nurses' lives you've touched and careers you've impacted. And then, of course, the people that you served in all of the disasters, the many disasters where you volunteered with the Red Cross, and also for raising four wonderful children that are spread out all over the country. So just thank you so much for all that you've done, and we wish you all the best getting settled at Preston Point.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Retirement Point podcast. Please be sure to like and subscribe.